Hi, I'm John Casti, co-author of the book Confronting Complexity, written with my colleagues Roger Jones and Michael Pennock. I'd like to take a few minutes of your time this afternoon to just tell you a little bit about this book. The main goal of the book is to start laying foundations for what one might call a science of surprise. And our components, if you like, of the emerging science of surprise are aimed at addressing the question of how do we manage, how do we anticipate, how do we deal with extreme events. That's what we mean by a surprise, a kind of an event that's rare, it has great impact, and is surprising. Now, we feel that the drivers, if you like, of the X events are three. The first one is mass psychology, how a group feels about its future on all time scales. So if a group feels positive about its future, is looking forward to the future, is anticipating that tomorrow will be better than today, then the type of events that one can expect to see, and here I mean collective social events, not individual events, the type of events that you can expect to see would be labeled with terms like happy, joining, welcoming, globalizing, etc. And by way of contrast, if people are pessimistic about the future, if they feel that tomorrow is probably going to be worse than today, then the bias is toward events of just the opposite polarity. Instead of happy, sad. Instead of welcoming, rejecting. Instead of globalizing, localizing, and so on. So this idea of mass psychology, what we call the social mood, is one of the primary drivers of situations that give rise to extreme events. The second major driver is what we'll call complexity overload or complexity mismatch. Here we have two systems, say the financial services sector and the regulators, that are in interaction. And each of those systems has its own level of complexity, and that level is dynamically shifting all the time. And so almost never do they have exactly the same level of complexity, but one is a little higher than the other, vice versa. But as long as that gap is relatively small, then the stresses between the two subsystems, the regulators and the financial market, is not too great, and everybody gets along reasonably well. But if one of the systems starts developing a complexity level that's much greater than the other one, then it's like stretching a rubber band. And we know that you can stretch a rubber band to a certain degree, but if you try and stretch it beyond its elastic limit, then you're going to have trouble. Nature is going to step in and reduce that complexity gap. And the way nature does it, or human nature, is not very pretty. You get a crash. So this is the second driver of extreme events, is complexity mismatches, complexity overloads, however you want to term it. Now, the third component of the theory of surprise is what we call resilience. This is the ability of a system to absorb shocks, unexpected shocks, like a crash somewhere, and to continue to carry out its function, to survive, not only survive the shock, but also to be able to in some way reconfigure itself, adapt, if you like, in order to carry on its function into the future. So those are the three major issues dealt with in our book, Confronting Complexity: social mood, complexity gaps, and resilience. The first two components, social mood and complexity gaps, in this new book it's really revisiting material and updating material that appeared in two of my previous books. The social mood activities were described in my book Mood Matters, and the complexity overload issues were taken up in my book X Events. So this new book actually gives you a kind of a compressed version and an updated version of what you would find in those other books. And of course, resilience is a new topic on the agenda. Now, the main point then is how is this material presented? And we took a kind of slightly different way of formatting this book in order to make going through the material a little easier for readers. If you're a reader who's interested in, let's say, the theory and some stories, if you like, but mostly the theory of social mood, complexity, gaps, and resilience, then that material is in the book. It all appears on pages that are white. On the other hand, if you're a more applications-oriented person, you want to know how are these ideas actually, how do they appear in real-life situations? How are they dealt with in real-life situations? What are some of the questions that arise in dealing with extreme events? Then go to the pages that are in gray. So if you start reading the book, you're a theory kind of guy, you start reading white pages, white pages, white pages, all of a sudden you come to a gray page. You know that now the mood is shifting, you're going to start seeing applications and questions and issues having to do with how do you use these theories. So if you're a theory-oriented person, then stay with the white pages. If you're an applications-oriented person, then you're a gray page person. And finally, if you're both, then you read everything. So that's my short account of our book, Confronting Complexity. Here's a little bit of a picture of what it looks like. You will see on the video in just a moment a website where you can actually obtain a copy of the book, either in printed fashion like this or ebook style. So that's my story for today. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you enjoy the book. Bye.